Eggs and Issues, a monthly business forum bringing timely economic discussion to the region for 35 years. Presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to our 2019-2020 sponsors and partners. Presenting sponsors, Bank of America and Martins Point Healthcare. Cooperating sponsors, First Light, WEX, and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Community Corner sponsor, Goral Palmer. Parking sponsor, CV and Mahar Engineers. Reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, KeyBank, and Veril. Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs sponsors, Springborn Staffing Center and AAA Northern New England. Media partners, News Radio WGAN, The Forecaster, WMTW, and Maine's CW. Maine Biz, with production support provided by Headlight. And thank you to our 2019-20 special community partners. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, the University of Southern Maine, and Southern Maine Community College. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber President, Jim Cohen.
Welcome to Eggs and Issues. This is the Portland Mayoral Debate edition of Eggs and Issues. My name is Jim Cohen. I'm a partner with the Veril Law Firm, and I'm honored to serve as the volunteer president of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. As a former Portland mayor myself, I've been looking forward to hearing from the four candidates who will be talking to you shortly to hear about their platforms and debate the topics that matter most to the residents and businesses of Portland and the region. Now, a thank you to each of the mayoral candidates for joining us today, and to Channel 8 WMTW anchor Steve Bottari, who will be moderating the debate. I also noticed Councilor Mavadonis was here. Are there any other councilors who otherwise are not on the stage who are joining us today? Well, welcome to Councilor Mavadonis. Now, don't forget the election is November 5th, and the election will be conducted with ranked choice voting. Now, this is very, very important to understand, because with ranked choice voting, which is sometimes called instant runoff voting, it's important to rank all the candidates and not simply vote for your top choice. Why, you ask? Imagine if you decided only to vote for one candidate, thinking that's the best way to make sure that my top choice gets elected, but your candidate ends up coming in last after the first round. Because it's ranked choice voting, your ballot would otherwise have deferred to your second place choice in the next round. But because you didn't vote for a second place choice, your ballot will now count for no one. That's the equivalent of showing up to vote for the general election and then not showing up to vote for the runoff election a month later. And since it's done instantly, that's why you need to rank all of the candidates. It will not hurt your top choice in any way. Your ballot will continue to count for your top choice as long as that candidate did not receive the lowest vote count in any round of the instant runoff. I can say this with confidence because I served on the Charter Commission that created the position of elected mayor, and after months of study, we found that the ranked choice voting system that we adopted, and that later was extended statewide, could not be gamed, and that bullet voting did not help your top candidate, and that voting for all of the candidates was the best way to ensure that your vote counts. So please, fill out your vote ballot completely. Now, if you want to be kept informed about the upcoming election and other important policies that affect Maine businesses and residents, please visit our website at portlandregion.com, Advocacy 1 to subscribe. Now, upcoming events with the Portland Regional Chamber can also be found on our website, including next week's Women of the Chamber, happening on Thursday, October 17th, featuring Elizabeth Peavy discussing tips and techniques to incorporate your breath and body, as well as your brain, in all forms of communication, from a keynote to a cocktail party, and from the boardroom to a break room. Our October Eaton Peabody Growth Basics for Business seminar will focus on intellectual property in the 21st century. This seminar will explain the difference between a patent trademark, the steps to secure a copyright for original work, and what you should do when you discover that someone is infringing on your IP rights. These and other topics will be covered by Eaton Peabody Senior Counsel Jeff Joyce. November's Eggs and Issues will focus on the future of mass transit in the Portland region. As the region continues to grow, traffic congestion and limited transportation alternatives greatly impact our communities and our businesses. Christina Egan of the Greater Portland Council of Governments, GPCOG, will moderate a panel of transportation sector leaders as they discuss mass transit solutions, as well as the future of highways and roads we currently rely on for transportation. For those of us who have witnessed the explosion of traffic in our region, public transportation is one potential solution, so you won't want to miss November's Eggs and Issues. And save the date of Wednesday, January 29th for Imagine Portland, our annual awards event and community celebration. Returning to Brick South at Thompson's Point, we honor those who are helping build a prosperous Portland region. Registration for Imagine Portland is now live on the Chamber website, and nominations are coming soon. And there is still time to purchase the Chamber Season Pass, which not only saves you money for all upcoming Kegs and Issues, and our annual event, but automatically registers and reminds you as well. To purchase your pass, see a full calendar of upcoming events, and learn how your organization can sponsor a Chamber event, visit portlandregion.com. The generosity of our sponsors makes our events possible. A special thanks to our Eggs and Issues presenting sponsors, Bank of America and Martins Point Healthcare. And to each of our partner sponsors who make this event possible, thank you for your generous and continued support. And a warm thank you to our special community partners, Anthem, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, University of Southern Maine, and Southern Maine Community College. These partners support each of the Portland Regional Chamber's efforts and initiatives, as well as our entire event season. Thank you. Our sponsors make this possible. Our members give us purpose. I'd like to recognize our newest members to the Chamber. The following organizations have joined the Chamber in the past month. Please hold your applause till the end. Baird, Baxter Brewing Company, LLC, Board and Brush Creative Studio, Business Women's Republican Club of Greater Portland, Colliers International, Greenlight Maine, Heel Accounting, Kathleen E. Perkins, LLC, Kyocera Document Solutions New England, Long Beach Marina, Inc., Maine Laser Clinic, Maine Port Authority, Mainly SEO, Mindwell Marketing, No Frills Farm, Portland Direct Primary Care, Portland Parks Conservancy, Screen Vision Media, Spa Tech Institute, and Wireless World. A round of applause for all of our newest members. Thank you so much. AAA Northern New England and Springborn Staffing provide support for our Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs program, which allows area high school and college students to attend Eggs and Issues. With us today, we have students from, amongst others, USM School of Business, Southern Maine Community College, Thornton Academy, and Gorham High School. If you could stand and be recognized. Thank you for coming. And as always, Headlight Audiovisual provides us with our technical support, and the video from today's keynote presentation will be available shortly on the Chamber's website and our YouTube channel. And of course, our FMI sponsor is the Portland Public Library, who will be providing additional information on today's topic. All attendees will receive this information from the Chamber via email in the coming week. Goral Palmer is the 2019-2020 Community Corner program sponsor. And today's featured nonprofit organization is Maine Behavioral Healthcare. Maine Behavioral Healthcare is the most comprehensive behavioral healthcare provider in Maine, employing over 1,100 people. The organization operates the behavioral health science line for Maine Health. Maine Behavioral Healthcare serves as the Maine Health lead in the development of a comprehensive strategy to address the opioid and substance abuse crisis afflicting Maine communities. And Maine Behavioral Health Care is also home to the Center for Autism and Developmental Disorders in South Portland. Now, with us today from Maine Behavioral Health Care are Melania Turgaleski, Lori Allen, Abby Borchards, Valerie Compagna, Michelle Zuccella, Amy Carroll, Lisa Bush, Mary Jane Krebs, Mike Abatiello, Dr. Robert McCarley, and Peter Eastman. If you could please stand and be recognized. To show our appreciation and support, the Chamber will be making a contribution to Maine behavioral health. And one last note, that we are again partnering with Maine Green Power to power all our EGGS events from now through the end of the 2019-2020 season. Maine Green Power is the voluntary green power option for electricity that is available to Maine homes and to Maine businesses. It is sponsored by the Maine Public Utilities Commission. Now on to the debate. Today's moderator is Channel 8 WMTW Anchor Steve Bottari. And joining us are mayoral candidates Travis Curran, Kate Snyder, Ethan Strimling, and Spencer Thibodeau. So please join me in welcoming Steve Bottari and the Portland mayoral candidates.
Good morning. Welcome and thank you for joining us at the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce Mayoral Debate. Glad to see such a crowd this morning, obviously reflective of the importance of this election. Now, before we begin, I want to take a moment to set the stage here, if we can, with some general background on the City Council here in Portland. The council is made up of 5 members elected from districts, each representing about 13,000 voters. There are also 3 at-large council members who are elected by all the voters in the city. All district and at-large councilors serve 3-year terms, and there are no term limits. And as of 2011, the Portland City Charter calls for an elected mayor who may serve no more than 2 consecutive 4-year terms. This year, 2 districts are up for election, as is the mayor's seat, hence why we're here this morning. We're pleased to have 4 candidates for us for mayor this morning, starting at my far right, Travis Curran, Kate Snyder, Ethan Strimling, and Spencer Thibodeau. So this morning, the format is as follows. Each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute opening statement. I'll then pose a series of questions, and each of you have a minute and a half to respond. And then this is a debate after all, so there will be a 30-second rebuttal if warranted and if time allows, and that'll be at my discretion. And to close, each candidate will then get a 1-minute closing statement. There is a clock ticking right here in front of us, and we're going to hold everybody firm to the time allotments established. We will see how that goes.
Could you make it a little bigger?
Okay, so we will begin today with the opening statements from each candidate. We'll start in alphabetical order, beginning with Travis.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me? Ooh, hello, hot mic. Do I have everyone? Hi, I'm Travis Curran, everyone. My name's, I work at Empire Chinese Kitchen. I'm a waiter. I've been in the restaurant industry for the last decade or so. I'm running for mayor to represent the service industry and every working class Portlander here. I grew up in Portland. I absolutely believe that the mayor should be a voice of the people in City Hall and in City Council. No more divisiveness, infighting. I think that the will of the people needs to be represented, and that we have to fix Portland on a base level. As the rents rise and okay, I'm sorry, let me start over. I got real nervous. Too much coffee. Thank you for all the free coffee. But yeah, no, I think we need to keep the service industry from being priced out. Who's gonna serve the lobster rolls to Massachusetts if we all have to move to Westbrook? I've watched all of my friends get priced out of their apartments through landlords evicting them and turning their reasonably priced, affordable houses into Airbnb shells. I think Portland needs a better transportation system. We need to fix the metro to help everybody. You're going to hear a lot more about me later. Other than that, honestly, I look forward to debating my fellow colleagues here. I need some water. All right.
There is water. Travis,
I got water, everyone. Thank you. You'll hear from me soon.
Kate.
Okie doke. Hi there, everybody. I'm Kate Snyder. Good morning. Thank you to the Chamber for having us here today, and thank you all for being here. I'm running for mayor, and I hope to earn your first place vote on November 5th. My husband Colin and I moved to Portland 25 years ago. We lived on Munjoy Hill for a few years before we bought our house on Kenwood Street. We have 3 children who were born and raised in Portland and attended Portland public schools. When our kids were young, I earned a master's in public policy from the Muskie School with a focus on public finance. And I served on the school board for 6 years. Our family has benefited greatly from this wonderful community. I love Portland, and I'm concerned. During these final weeks of the campaign, our community is going to decide if we feel represented at City Hall, if the most important issues are being addressed well, if government is working in its current configuration, and I assert we need a change. As mayor, I will set a tone of civility and inclusion. I'll offer leadership that respects all neighborhoods and all constituencies.
And that is time. Ethan.
Folks, our city is at a crossroads. At a moment when remarkable wealth is flowing into our city, this week we learned that in order to buy the median house price in the city of Portland, a family has to earn $102,000 a year. 47% of the renters in our city are paying 30% or more of their income in rent. Our city is squeezing the middle class. Wealth is flowing into the city, but it is not flowing to our working people. We are going to lose our city if we don't focus on this, if we don't recognize that the heart and soul of who we are is our working class and middle class families. So as we look at all this wealth, let's find a way to work together to share it.
Thank you. Spencer.
Good morning. My name is Spencer Thibodeau. I'm running to be your next mayor. Like many Portlanders, I came here in a different way. I was adopted here when I was 3 weeks old to a family in Libbytown. My dad is a carpenter and my mom is a nurse, and they gave us everything we could have ever asked for as kids. When I came back after law school, I noticed something changing. The neighborhood that I grew up in looked different. And the dream that my parents had to own a home in a neighborhood in Portland seemed out of reach for so many. Likewise, as my parents start to get ready to retire, I'm afraid their dream to stay in their home is also improbable. My hope as your next mayor is to take the working majority that has supported my campaign and get to work for you. There's no on-the-job training for me. I'm a city councilor, I'm an attorney, and I hope to be your next mayor, and I'd love your vote in November.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll begin the first rounds of questions again. Each candidate will have a minute and a half to answer. We're going to start this in alphabetical order as well, starting with Travis. And we'll begin talking about the role of the mayor. As stated in the Portland City Charter, the mayor is the official head of the city responsible for providing leadership, articulating the city's vision, and building coalitions to further such vision and goals. But by design, the mayor was not empowered to run the city. That is the job of the city manager. With those guardrails and limited power, do you think the charter should be changed to allow the mayor to run all departments of city government? Or on the other end of the spectrum, do you think a popularly elected mayor should be eliminated? Travis.
Thank you. I believe the mayor should be the voice of the people in City Hall. I believe I'm qualified for the job. I walk up and down Congress Street twice a day, every day for the last decade. I canvassed all by myself. I got 400 signatures with a clipboard on my own, and I asked everyone, are you a Portland resident, and what would you like to see changed? Everyone I talked to, 99%, had something bad to say about City Hall. They did not agree with the decisions being made. They were not okay with the infighting and the divisiveness. They were not all right with the decisions that the city manager was with the budget to slash India Street, the free health clinic. You're familiar. The role of mayor should absolutely be to guide city council to be the will of its constituency, and not make corporate interests or conflicts of interests by other parties. I aim to represent the people. I listen to them. I go to their stores. I drink the coffee with them on the street. I smoke cigarettes with them in front of the homeless shelter. I shouldn't have told you guys I smoke. I'm quitting smoking. Good. But no, as mayor, I believe we can bring a unity to City Hall and truly represent the people and make sure Portland City Hall works for the people and not for anybody else, not lining our own pockets. I have skin in the game. I have nothing to win or lose. I'm here for you people.
All right, thank you. Kate.
I do believe that the mayor position as crafted by the Charter Commission in 2010 can be successful and can be a value add to the city of Portland. And let's face it, we're going to have a mayor for the next 4 years. I want this position to work for Portland. And faithfulness to the role, to me, matters because it allows both the community and your colleagues on the council and beyond to trust that you understand your role and their role, and you're in it to work together. Our issues in Portland are too big and too complex to leave folks out. We've got to, as you said, build coalitions and be inclusive. Everybody's voice has something to add. If we're talking about the need for affordable housing, developers ought to be at the table helping us to understand our options. If we're talking about inclusionary zoning, we've got to have a multitude of folks at the table talking about how that's going to work best for Portland. The housing fund, same thing. When the charter changed, the community got together and made these changes together. They're imperfect. It's not an executive position. It's a policy mayor that requires somebody who understands that we cannot be creating winners and losers through the advancement of one policy over another. Our issues are too big, too important. We've got to bring folks together and work together. Municipal government requires compassion. It also requires the voice of folks who are content area experts, who can help inform the committees and the council's work so that the decisions are good for everybody in Portland.
Okay, thank you. Ethan.
The mayor's role is to be your voice, to be the voice of the people of this city. In the last 4 years, that's what I've been. And in that voice, bringing your voices, the middle class, the working class, small businesses into City Hall, we've achieved a remarkable amount of work. It's been effective. We passed the largest bond in our city's history to rebuild 4 elementary schools. We provided property tax relief for the people who need it most, our seniors. We banned pesticides. We put $1 million into the housing trust that has now quadrupled the amount of annual housing that is being built in the city versus what had been happening for decades before. We pushed up wages for workers, construction workers in the city of Portland, reformed corporate welfare to hold people accountable. On and on, we have been able to achieve remarkable results in 4 years through this system. And I might add, just about every one of those votes was unanimous. Might have been rough getting there. When we passed the 4-school bond, probably the signature achievement of the last 4 years, there were maybe 2 votes in support of it when it first came forward. But after working with my colleagues and with the community over the course of a year, we passed it 8-1. And the people of this city then passed that bond 2-1, overwhelmingly. That's the role of the mayor, to bring the people's voice to City Hall.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. And just a point of clarification here, I'll give you 20 seconds. Do you believe that the role should be changed at all or eliminated?
Not for this term. I have said for a long time that I think ultimately the mayor should become more of an executive mayor. I think it's very important that the mayor be the person who is driving policy and trying to implement, but I would strengthen the mayor's position and the council's position. I think both of those have to be elevated in order to really create a democracy that is representative of the people of city.
Okay, thank you. Spencer.
Thank you. Two things. When I showed up to work at the concession stand at the Sea Dogs when I was younger, I didn't expect to go out on the field and play baseball. And so my point in saying that is that I think the position does work. But if you're running for this office and you want to get rid of the city manager, like the current mayor has stated, I think that is a problem. I don't care what you do for a living. If you don't have the trust and respect of your colleagues, you don't have any basis of success. And so for me, my goal has been two things. My goal has been to disagree without being disagreeable on a Monday night, but on Tuesday and Wednesday at committee, we've got to get back to work. That's what this position is about. The role of the mayor with the manager is to provide a partnership, a collaborative relationship to execute on the policy goals of the city council. That's what I've done for the last 4 years. I've worked with my colleagues, and I'm going to do that for the next 4 years. And just finally, I wouldn't change the role. I believe this framework can work. I think the question is whether the people who we represent trust that the mayor is speaking for not just the council, but for the people. But that's going to be important when we go to Augusta, when we go to Washington and fight for dollars for dredging out in the harbor, or when we're fighting to claw back additional school funding in Augusta. I wouldn't change the charter, and as your mayor, I will work within the role to go to work for you.
Ethan, you can have a rebuttal.
Thank you. Listen, it's really important to understand, number one, how much we've gotten done. I'm certainly not running saying that we need to get rid of the city manager. I've never said that at all. But I have said very clearly that the mayor should be driving policy in the city of Portland. And sometimes, look, there's been some bumps in the road over the last few years for sure, and because of very serious policy differences. And I think the mayor and the council should be the ones that are driving the policy as opposed to staff driving policy. That's where we've seen some real disagreements. The for-school bond, pesticide ban, a number of these issues were issues that the people wanted, and we had to get done.
All right, Spencer, then Kate.
Yep, and I was just going to say, I think this is an important distinction because at the Libbytown Forum, the mayor actually said that he wanted to get rid of the manager and supported changes to the charter to do that. We cannot have a mayor who does not want to fill the position that they are running for. Why would you hire somebody who doesn't want to fill that position? My goal is to go to work for the people in the role as it's defined. I've done that. I will continue to do that. And I believe the next mayor of Portland, to make this position work, must do that as well.
Kate.
We've got representative government here in Portland, and in order for that to work, we need to trust that the roles can work. And so the mayor's position in the charter is described to be, one of the roles is to make sure that there's an annual priority setting workshop. The policy doesn't come from the mayor solely. The policy driver comes from the council that is representative government. The agendas have got to reflect the will of the council so that folks are bought in to what's on the agenda, and they're going to work together hard to get good outcomes.
Okay, Travis, you want a chance to jump in?
Yes. As far as the city charter being revised, I think the role of mayor currently is in an okay place, and we're going to watch it grow and see exactly how powerful it can be. But Spencer spoke of trust and respect among his colleagues. I challenge you to go outside and find anyone who trusts or respects the city manager.
I'll give you a chance to respond.
I don't really have anything to respond.
Okay.
I mean, if you are running for this office, you're running to work with the city manager. That is the goal of this office. That's why we're all here. The manager executes the policy of the council. When I have prostitution in my district, I go to the manager to work with the police chief to conduct a sting. If I've got a brick out of place in my neighborhood, I work with the manager to get city staff to go out and fix the brick. This is the job, folks.
Ethan.
Yeah, just real quick. Look, we are not running. It's so backwards that we even have conversations about who is going to work best with the city manager as the designation of who we should elect. The city manager should be working with whoever the mayor is. That's the key. We are electing who you want as mayor, and then we put pieces in place to make sure that the goals can be implemented. And I would just disagree with my colleague to my right here to say you can't go to the council every time and ask permission before you bring an issue forward. If we did that, we wouldn't have passed the for-school bond or the pesticide ban or property tax relief for seniors. You've got to bring forward what the people want and then build the coalition to get it across the finish line.
Thank you, Kate. You can respond.
This can't be an adversarial position. And the truth is that the city manager is one of 3 hires by the city council. I have experience both working for boards and being on boards. And the deal is in Portland is that the council as a body hires, evaluates, and potentially lets go a city manager. If things aren't working out, that's the council's job to determine. It's not the mayor's job. And so in order to be able to be a team of folks who are working together in the interests of the city, you've got to be able to approach the manager as a body.
Okay, thank you. We're going to keep moving on here. We got a lot to get to. As we all know, Portland's a very diverse city. As mayor, which stakeholders are going to get your greatest attention and which will get the least? And where do city employers fall in that lineup for you? We'll start with Kate.
That's a terrible question.
Yeah, good answer.
I'm just going to be honest. I always try to answer precisely as the question was posed. You can't pick favorites, and honestly, this is the core of what I believe, is that when we have a system that makes it feel like you're either on my side or you're not, something's missing. There are times where I feel like my voice is not being heard at City Hall, and that's troubling to me. And I want to make sure that we've got somebody in the mayor's position who is willing to sort of step outside themselves to the extent that they can bring others to the table and moderate an open and honest discussion among folks who might disagree. And to me, disagreement, discussion, debate, that's all healthy. That's part of it. We all come to this work with our various frames of reference. But to say that one stakeholder group is more important than another, I think would be a terrible thing, because people come with legitimate concerns and legitimate input. And so we need a mayor who really is about building coalition, who's going to bring homeless voices for justice and developers to the table at the same time and try to figure out what the solutions to our affordable housing and low-income eligible housing problem is. This can't be about winners and losers. It can't be about you're on my side or not. We need a mayor who's truly seen as objective and willing to do that work.
That is time. I'll give you a quick response, so to follow up to the last part of the question. Where do city employers fall in the lineup for you?
Important. I mean, like I said, I've been both on boards and on staff. Staff that's overseen by governing boards, and I think that it's a partnership. It's teamwork. An organization has a mission, and in the city of Portland, our mission is to do good municipal work for the folks who live here and work here. And so city staff plays a big role in that. And so the governing body and the staff have to be able to work together and really understand the roles, because they're different. Governance and financial oversight is different than the everyday boots on the ground.
Thank you. Ethan.
Yeah, it obviously depends on the issues, but most important is trying to make sure, as I said earlier, that our middle class and our working class are protected in this city. The teachers, the firefighters, construction workers, folks who every day are building this city, our waiters and folks who are office admins. They're the folks who honestly need to make sure that we're watching out for them. And of course, new immigrants who are arriving on our city and desperate to try to find security and safety to build a new family. People who are struggling in the community, first and foremost, is what government's role is to try to help them. As my good friend Betsy Sweet often says, when you want to try to solve problems, you've got to talk to the people who are the closest to the problem. You've got to talk to the folks who are in the homeless shelter and ask them, is it a good idea to shut this down and move it to the outskirts of the city? Because when you talk to them, you'll find out, of course, that's a terrible decision. You have to talk to folks, waiters, who don't have paid sick time, who can't take a single day off when they're sick, and ask them, is it a good idea for Portland to not provide sick time for you? And of course, you'll hear that, of course, that's terrible. You have to ask people who want to get big money out of politics, is it a good idea for us to not allow the voters to vote on clean elections? And you'll hear, of course, that was another terrible decision.
That's time. Okay, thank you. Spencer.
So I think the question was about stakeholders, and I think every issue is different. I would say, yes, you have to meet people where you are. That's why when I first got elected, I was doing monthly coffees with your counselor. You also have to show up. And so I've walked people's property lines with them to figure out where the water's flowing from a neighbor. I mean, this is the job. And so you take the meeting. It's not always going to be kumbaya every step of the way. We've gone through some tough battles, even in my 4 years on the council. But what I've always found is the folks who you may be on a different side of the issue with, the very next month, you may be on the same side of an issue working together, right? That's what your district, that's what the city expects. And just a point about winners and losers. On every vote that we take, we don't have the liberty of saying maybe. We have to vote yes or no. And in case you were wondering, most of the issues that we vote on aren't black and white. They're shades of gray. If they were black and white, we would just have a town meeting and everyone would show up and they would vote on that issue. That's not this job. This job is to build working groups, folks who are going to come together. I've done that twice now in my district, once with Maine Medical Center's expansion, the other with the Western Working Waterfront Group. These are stakeholders that are still meeting today, still doing good work today. As mayor, I will build those coalitions and those working groups to go to work for you.
Okay. Travis.
I think the most important stakeholders should be those with the most to lose, including the service industry, restaurant workers who are going to have to be forced to move out as rents rise, and there's no control over it. I'm not absolutely not saying rent control. I'm just saying we really need to cap Airbnb investment properties to create more units of affordable rental properties for the people like me to be able to rent. And in order to live and work here, we have to fix parking to help them out as well. We also, the people that can lose the most are the homeless as well. They live here, they're Portlanders just like you and I, and sweeping them under the carpet and putting them as far away as possible isn't gonna help any of them. I think the fishermen need far more help. The island communities, I went out to Peaks Island, they're very upset. They feel like they've been ignored. They need a parking structure a little bit closer to Casco Bay ferry lines. The people the stakeholders have to be very important here, because if they don't hold any stakes, they lose. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the middle class is also equally important. I'm not trying to ignore the missing middle here, but as property taxes are rising, we all don't want to lose our homes. We grew up here and we love it here. I understand. And as far as the city employees are concerned, they're equally as important at the table, because they have to employ us, those who are going to work the jobs, pour the coffee, wait your tables, bust your dishes, take out your trash.
Okay, you can have 30 seconds.
Thank you. My reference to winners and losers is grounded in good process. And what I mean by that is that when a vote is taken, I understand that there's going to be the yeses and the nos, and that we're going to move on from there. But this is where process matters. When the community is alienated from the beginning to either be on my team or not on my team, that's where we lose the nuance and we lose the grays that happen in this decision making. I understand. I chaired the school board during very difficult economic times. I understand what it takes to build a process that allows people to accept outcomes for those outcomes to be durable.
Thank you. Spencer.
I was just going to say, I actually agree with what Kate just said there. I think no matter what the process looks like, what I found on every tough decision that we've made is that there are people who feel like they didn't even know the process was going on. You could send out 1 million notices. You could post it all over social media. It doesn't matter. And those folks are going to come to the next mayor and say that I lost, I wasn't involved in the process. What we need is somebody who's experienced that, and that's the difference that I offer folks in November.
Okay, thank you. That's time. Yes, you can respond.
Just real quick. Look, I understand that there's some pushback around the kind of voices that have been brought to the table in the last few years, but recognize that it was a generation waiting to rebuild our schools. And the way that we actually got that bond passed is because teachers and parents and kids and taxpayers and small businesses all got to the table finally and had their voices heard. And that's how we got property tax relief passed, and that's how we got a ban on pesticides passed and pushing up wages. We brought new voices to the table finally.
Thank you.
And got it done.
Spencer, if you wanted to respond.
Yeah, I would just say, while that's maybe true, we also had folks feel like they couldn't show up to City Hall to speak their mind on specific issues. And I would say that to me is not a good process, as my colleague Kate Snyder said. I think I would agree with her. We got to make sure the voices are welcome at City Hall. But if we are stuck dialing down really complex issues to a progressive Portland-sized email, that's not going to tell the full story. And so I think that's an important distinction that I offer in November.
Thank you. Ethan, you were referenced if you want to respond.
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about is like issues like paid sick leave. It was pretty straightforward what that issue was. It wasn't all gray and murky and mushy. 10,000 workers in the city of Portland don't have paid sick leave today because we lost a vote 5-4. 10,000 workers. Our homeless shelter is being put on the edge of Timbuktu on a 5-4 vote. Those aren't gray. It's pretty black and white. And there were some people who were very angry about those decisions being made. Clean elections is another one. Let's be clear. New voices are at the table. We may not like those new voices, but they're part of this city just like the rest of us.
Thank you. Kate, you wanted to get in?
I did. I want to be clear, to me, that context matters. And so we have had a significant investment in school renovation, and I think that that's wonderful. But the context that I want to be able to point out is it's awfully hard to get a community to approve a local bond for renovation when you're in the midst of a recession or you're recovering from a recession. We've had East End School renovated on state dollars, Ocean Avenue School renovated on state dollars, and when I was on the school board and times were tough, we invested in pre-K. I want to be careful that context is part of our discussion.
Thank you. Spencer?
I'm good.
Okay. We'll move on then because several of you have brought this up already. One of the biggest challenges Portland faces is a lack of affordable housing in the city. Median family home is about $379,000. The average rent right now for a two-bedroom is anywhere between $1,200 and $2,000 a month. As we know, housing prices are often a function of supply and demand. What do you think is the city's role when it comes to housing? Does it include rezoning for greater densities, subsidies, rent controls, or other policy decisions? We'll start with Ethan.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This really is the crisis for our city. And just to give a quick picture to show what's going on, we had this remarkable moment in the city in which 400 immigrants arrived at our border. And it was just an inspiring moment where we got to see the next generation who are going to be the workers and families that will build our city in the future. The problem, of course, was not that we didn't have room in our schools for these families, was not that we didn't have room in our economy for these families. The problem was we didn't have housing for these families, and subsequently we had to open the expo and have people sleeping on cots in a gymnasium. Now let's be clear, we didn't need 1,000 units of housing to give these families a place to live. We needed 100. In a city with 17,000 apartments, we couldn't find 100 that were affordable for the next generation of workers, of families. That is a crisis. That's why we have got to find a way to build more housing in this city. It's why I support a $10 million housing bond. A $10 million housing bond will build 1,000 units of housing in the city. Right now, today, as we sit here in our fancy breakfast, there are 1,200 families on the Portland Housing Authority waiting list looking for a place to live. 1,200. That's probably 3,000 people.
Thank you. Spencer.
I would just say, let's look at the last 4 years. Where's the planning been? Where has the guidance and the policy direction been? That's the question. We know that we have an affordability issue. And in fact, the $10 million housing bond that's being talked about actually raises people's property taxes. When you talk about 17,500 rental units in the city, that means that we also have over 18,000 single-family homeowners. And a lot of them are struggling to stay in their home. So when you talk about taxes going in, the reason why the housing bond failed, 8-1 or 7-2, the reason why I didn't interrupt you. The reason why the housing bond failed 7-2 was because the legwork wasn't done to get that done. What I'm calling for is something that we just did with Community Housing of Maine and taking a parking lot that's currently existing across from Hugo's and saying we'll lease it for $1 if you put 49 units of affordable housing on it. 11 of those units are reserved for long-term stayers. My Missing Middle initiative calls for 5 parcels of land that we've identified through the work that we've done in relocation of the shelter along our main traffic nodes to do the same thing for workforce and affordable housing. I'm also advocating in Augusta and will be advocating as your next mayor for a $25 million housing bond because the city of Portland can't go it alone. Guys, the LePage era is over. Portland doesn't have to do everything on its own. We need to collaborate with our state partners. I will do that as your next mayor.
Thank you. Travis.
The housing issue, incredibly important to me, and we all use the term crisis kind of loosely. It's an actual crisis, and you have to address it as such. So I propose emergency measures, such as Airbnb home sharing, which is a limit on unhosted Airbnb rentals. Airbnb itself, totally fine program. You want to turn your house into a little bed and breakfast on the internet, go ahead and do it. But in order to, if a landlord buys half of a building and refurbishes the apartments that could be long-term Portland residents that live here and work here and shell them out to bachelorette parties from other states, that's not acceptable. The apartment building right across from mine did exactly what I just described. They even took parking spots away and labeled them as Airbnb parking only, and they throw their empty beer cans in my front yard. It's absolutely unacceptable. And a baby step is the home sharing. It worked in New York, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Santa Monica. All destination cities had to address their housing crises. These are the steps they took, and it worked. Other steps, we're going to be absolutely zoning. We have to rezone for more multifamily units. We have to convince developers to build more workforce housing, not just 10%, 50%. And if there's a fee, if they don't do it, we have to increase that fee. We have to really take it seriously, guys. Like, I don't want to move to Westbrook.
Kate.
Thank you. It's important to me to think about what the city's levers are in response to the housing crisis that we've got. And so I'm thinking right now about taxes. One of the affordability factors for folks when they're thinking about buying a house in Portland and staying in Portland is whether or not they can afford the taxes. And our taxes are high. They're high in comparison to other communities. So when we look at last year's 3.7% increase on property taxes, that's an element that the city does have influence over and can pull a lever on. I think we've got to be more careful with people's property taxes. Housing costs are high also. When folks are looking to come into Portland and purchase a home, they're looking at not only the housing cost, but the property taxes. And to me, this is all about livability. Are we going to continue to be a city where people can live, work, and send their kids to school? And I'm very afraid we're going to miss the component of people who actually have kids in our school system. If we simply become a city of those wealthy enough to purchase homes at their current value and those who are in subsidized housing, we're going to have a whole different kind of city. I think part of the vibrancy of the city of Portland is that we've got families here who send their kids to school. Another lever that the city can pull is zoning. We've got to make it easier for people to renovate and change the property that they own and change industrial zones in our city to residential.
Thank you. Ethan.
Yeah, quickly, I don't know what meeting Councilor Thibodeau was at in which the housing bond was voted down. It hasn't been voted on. It's in committee. We talked about it just 2 weeks ago. We're still discussing it. So I don't know where that comes from. The housing bond is something that will build 1,000 units of housing in the city of Portland, which is what we need. Let me also just talk about property tax relief. You know, I understand what Kate is talking about making sure that middle-class families get property tax relief. They need it. Let's get it to them. You know, I love you, Jim Brady. God love you. But you got multi-million-dollar hotels downtown. I don't need to give property tax relief to multi-million-dollar hotels downtown. Okay. Middle-class families need it.
Spencer.
Just two things. I was remiss to say if I didn't say that I supported the the Recode Committee to look at density along our main nodes. I will just say the thing that we're not talking about is that we have 2,500 units that are dedicated to student housing right now. If we want our USM campus to grow, we need additional units of housing. When we talk about 400 units of Airbnb, this is 2,500 units of students living off campus. I'm fine with them living off campus, but we have to provide on-campus opportunities. That's something that I will work on to grow that campus of UMaine Portland, if Glenn is here.
Kate.
See you, Glenn.
I just want to be careful when we talk about floating local bonds to support housing. A $10 million bond sounds like a good idea. It's a big number and it's exciting. But are we going to yield the outcome that 1,000 units of housing on a $10 million bond? I haven't seen the numbers there yet, and I want to be careful. And I want to remind folks that as Portland is Maine's cultural and economic hub. We're a city of 67,000 people. And to strap Portlanders with that bond debt is something we need to be awfully careful about.
Thank you, Travis.
I forgot what the remark I was going to... No, Spencer talking about the cap of 400. I believe City Council voted to raise the cap of investment properties. We can't have it anymore. We need to have unhosted properties. We can't have unhosted properties. They're just taking homes away from the working class. And I believe Poor Property Management just sold half of Bayside Village and displaced how many people? Poor Property Management also did not endorse me.
Okay, thank you. Ethan.
Does Spencer want...
Yeah, do you want to...
Did you want to respond directly? Then I'll go. Go ahead.
Again.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, this is where getting into the details matters. The council made a change to owner-occupied versus non-owner-occupied definition. We actually had a net decrease in non-owner-occupied units and actually capped those at 400, where we sit today with 30 that are currently on the waiting list. This was a substantial change for the council to make. We've now taken this issue up twice. And so I just want to be clear, if it's all, the criticism is fine, but I'll just say, when you're mayor or when you're on the city council, the devil's in the details, and okay. I'm detail-oriented.
Ethan, then I have to move on.
Yeah, the devil is in the details. What we voted on in the council, the committee moved unanimously a vote to say exactly what Travis was talking about, which is unhosted only Airbnbs. The council, in 5-4 votes over and over again, loosened those regulations, increased the cap. 400 units are currently Airbnbs that are unhosted, right? How many houses did we need? How many apartments did we need to not open the expo? 100. Yes, that is a very important difference between the two of us in this race.
Okay, I gotta move on. City charter empowers the mayor with terms like guidance, consult with, facilitate. In the last 4 years, Portland residents have experienced far more conflict than collaboration between councilors, the city manager, and the mayor. That atmosphere has limited progress and in some cases created hostility. As mayor, what will each of you do to make progress but also foster collaboration? Spencer.
Yeah, so I have a firm belief that when you start talking about how much power you have, it becomes more and more evident that you have no power at all. And so for me, I believe the next mayor needs to take a page of humility and actually move forward in a collaborative process with members of the council. For the last 4 years, I've had some difficult fights. I talk about this story all the time about how Councilor Duson and I got in an argument in one of our first city council meetings. And as I was leaving, as a young lawyer, I felt like I just really won the case on that one. And as I'm leaving, Councilor Brenneman came over to me and he said, "Hey, how do you think that went?" And I was about to tell him, "Oh, I think I absolutely won that one." Well, he said, "It didn't go well." You need to reach out to Jill. And that is where I learned my first lesson about this job. Guys, if you want to get anything done on the council, I cannot be more clear about this. You've got to be able to, 1, let things go, but 2, trust in your colleagues to make the decision that they're going to make. We all come at this job with extremely different perspectives. I'm a Portlander. I'm now a lawyer. I was also a landscaper. I was also a person who set up event tents throughout the state of Maine. That's the perspective that I bring to this job. And so when you're looking for a hard worker, what I'm asking you to do is say, who's actually rolled up their sleeves? Who's actually gotten into the details? Who's gotten past the talking points and actually focused on the solutions? I offer you that choice in November. I want your vote. I will go to work for you.
Travis.
Collaboration is really important. If you want us to talk about conflict and collaboration, I invite any of you to wait tables at a high-volume restaurant on a Saturday night with a lot of egos and a lot of baggage, and they are not leaving it at the door, people. I know I'm unpolished. I know I lack political experience, but what I have is honesty and transparency. I'm going to listen to everybody, and I'm going to be able to collaborate with them, including the city manager, including our city councilors. I've done my best to get to know them all. They kind of dodge me. I wait on them at Empire Chinese Kitchen. I've served them dumplings. I'm going to go do that later today. I've worked 5 days a week this entire campaign. I'm a one-man show, people. But no, in city council, I completely believe I have the capacity to reason. I'm very friendly. We're going to collaborate. We're going to listen. And if there's a decision, I don't want it to be 5-4. I want it to be 9-1, 7-1, 8-1. Sorry, numbers. I'll make you change though. No, as your new mayor, honestly, I believe my honesty qualifies me more. I have not been stuck in the game. I'm not a politician here. I'm not a real estate attorney. I live on Munjoy Hill. I have for the last decade. I'm still going to walk to work every day down Congress Street.
Kate.
Thank you. Facilitation, consultation, and coalition building require leadership where somebody is willing to put their personal interests aside and work in the interest of the outcomes we seek. And that is what I offer. Leadership matters. Trust matters. Over the 25 years that I've lived in Portland, whether I'm helping to build the foundation for Portland Public Schools, helping to launch the Parks Conservancy, flipping burgers in the Little League Snack Shack, serving on the school board, I'm a known quantity, and I'm about building coalition among a group of people in order to achieve shared outcomes. And shared outcomes are so important. One of the first things that I learned on the school board in Portland was you're going to have debate, you're going to have dialogue, you're going to have disagreement, and then you're going to land at a vote. And whether that vote is 9-0 or 6-3, the body owns the outcome. And right now we're in a situation where too many outcomes don't feel owned by the body, and the community is confused. When we've got somebody calling for a reversal on the decision for the shelter out at Riverside who was part of that process, it makes many of us feel confused. Why isn't the body owning the outcomes? We've got to elevate others, and we've got to own the decisions that happen. And that's what facilitation and consultation and coalition is all about. It's about building process that allows you to land at an outcome that's defensible. People aren't going to love all outcomes. I get that. But you've got to be able to explain it in a way that people trust.
Thank you. Ethan.
For school bond, 8-1. Property tax relief, unanimous. Pesticide ban, unanimous. Increased wages for workers, unanimous. Solar array, unanimous. $1 million in the housing trust, unanimous. Right? That's how you get things done. That's how you work with your colleagues. Sometimes it's rough. Sometimes you throw some elbows. Sometimes you twist. Sometimes you just have a conversation over coffee or you have a drink. You find a way to bring people together to ultimately own the results. In those places where we didn't get to there, yeah, it's unfortunate. Not providing paid sick leave for workers, losing that vote 5-4, that's unfortunate. But you know what? It's unfortunate for the workers in this city that they didn't get it. They didn't get paid sick leave. And everybody's got to own their vote. But in terms of collaboration and getting results, because remember, this is a job about getting results for the people of the city. This is not a job about making sure that everybody gets along. Because that's what we used to have as a mayor. We used to have a mayor who was the mouthpiece of the council, appointed by the council. Some people may want to go back to that. We had that for 100 years. People of the city said, no, we want results for us, to protect us in our homes, and for our kids to make sure that they get a good education. That's what I've done.
Okay. I want to get to this as we still have time. The council, as you just mentioned, recently took up the mandatory paid sick leave on the municipal level, which ultimately failed, in good part because the state took action and preempted municipalities from passing their own ordinances on this issue. Do you believe labor and employment issues are best dealt with on the state level, or do you wish to deal with them on the local level? What initiatives should we expect from you in this arena? We'll reset time and start with Kate.
Thank you. I think that paid sick leave was not a municipal issue. I think that it was a state level issue, and I'm glad that the state took that up. I think it was an interesting conversation for our community to go through, and I think that we learned a lot, but ultimately I think that whether or not you live in Westbrook or South Portland or Biddeford or Augusta, you ought to have access to paid time off because you're sick, a member of your family is sick, or there's some extenuating circumstance. I think typically labor and employment issues are state level issues. However, there is an opportunity for folks in a local environment to get involved when needed. I think what's interesting here to me is that we want to be sure that people are compassionate. And sometimes it's set up to make it feel like there's compassion here, but there's not compassion there. For me, this is part of government's work. A big part of government's work is to make sure that we are indeed compassionate to our community and that people feel responded to and cared for. The paid sick leave, unfortunately, in my opinion, didn't feel like a priority of the council. It was wrestled about in the community, and at the council level, it engaged the business community in a way that felt it felt tough. Ultimately, I'm glad that we had the conversation in the city of Portland, but I'm not sure that agenda item felt like a council priority, and it felt like a bit of a mismatch when it really belonged at the state level.
Ethan.
It was a tough conversation because there are 10,000 workers in the city of Portland. When we started that conversation, there were 20,000. I'm glad the state did what it did, but the role that we're running for is mayor of Portland, not governor of the state. Our job is to fight for our people. And if 10,000 workers don't have paid sick time, our job is to try to help get them, even if the conversations are tough. So of course I believe that at the local level, we have to do whatever we can to try to make sure if the state's not providing health care, we should have a public health clinic, which of course we have, right? We step up in order to make sure that our people are taken care of. If the state doesn't ban pesticides, of course we step up and ban pesticides. If the state won't pay to rebuild our schools, we step up to build our schools. Do we want the state to do it? Of course, who wouldn't want the state to take the tab? But yes, we have to protect our workers. And one of the things I'll mention to you, I'll announce today, if I'm elected mayor in a second term, I'm going to push through a $15 an hour minimum wage. You know why? Because we need the competitive advantage in this city. When this was passed under Mayor Brennan, we all of a sudden had the city where workers wanted to come because we were paying more than right over the bridge. You could go over the bridge and make $7.50. You come to Portland, you're making $10 an hour. That gave us a competitive advantage. We're losing that advantage now because it's all coming together, and it's time for us to, again, move those wages up. Because, again, our median income is half what you need to buy a home in the city of Portland.
Thank you. Spencer.
I think it's important to recognize that the mayor doesn't always get to set the priority. You're one of 9. Your colleagues are going to bring forward proposals, and you can't really do anything to stop those proposals, whether you think they're a good idea or a bad idea. You just get to vote yes or no. When we talk about instances where the state hasn't acted, in this instance, this particular issue, it wasn't a question of when or if, it was a question of when. At the exact moment, on the Monday night when we took this vote, the state moved on that Wednesday or Thursday to act. And so I supported the Democratic governor of the state of Maine's proposal for paid time off. I expressed that to the proponents of the issue when I met with them at Arabica. We can reasonably disagree, and I think that's what this role is about. Just because I disagreed with Councilor Batson didn't mean that he took his ball and went home. Same thing with Councilor Ray. Didn't mean she took her ball and went home or held a grudge. We talked about it. We disagreed. We voted. We moved on. And that's what you do. We moved on to the next issue, which I think was the budget at that time. And so this is the job that we are running for. And so we can talk all day about just being the mayor of Portland, but results don't just matter, relationships also matter. And so relationships with the governor matter, relationships with our federal delegation matter, or else, what else are we doing here? And so for me, that's the difference that I offer you on November 5th. Somebody who's oriented towards relationship and team building, and that's why I have the support of the majority of my council, 6, including myself.
Spencer, thank you. Travis.
Including myself. I'm the funny one, thank you.
You can't have all the fun.
Yeah. The fact paid sick leave didn't pass in Portland was a slap in the face to the service industry. If you're a restaurant worker, you don't get paid time off. You have to get coverage for your shift. How many of you comfortable going out to eat at one of our many fine restaurants knowing your waiter had the flu yesterday? You know? Like this, I can't believe it was even a debate. And I've known mothers who've lost their jobs because their babies were sick and they had to stay home. I've known friends of mine who suffered because they couldn't find coverage and they were penalized, lost their job. Then they had to move out of Portland because the rents are rising. And I mean, honestly, I heard some laughter over there. Ethan sounds crazy with the whole $15 an hour thing. If the rents are rising and the wages don't, who's gonna live there?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's gonna live in these houses if, like, I mean, I'm lucky I'm a waiter. My dishwasher is not so lucky. He doesn't get tipped out. He has to make a minimum wage washing dishes 7 days a week in order to afford an apartment. And that he's when the revaluation comes through, he might lose his apartment. So I think when it comes to decisions about labor, it should be on a local level because we are the #1 restaurant city in America.
Thanks.
And we have to remember that.
Okay, I got to move on for time purposes. As a recent letter to the editor from the chair and vice chair of the Portland Regional Chamber stated, quote, "This is not a city that is broken. In fact, it is a city and region increasingly challenged by opportunity." That was the quote. As mayor, do you see audacious growth, managing what we have, or tapping the brakes when it comes to both public and private investments? And please be specific, Ethan.
Audacious growth, wow. As I started out by saying, we have to understand we're at a crossroads right now. And growth has to be balanced. And all honestly, wealth has to be shared. Right now, there is a lot of wealth, and a few people are doing incredibly well. But a lot of people are not. And so I'm interested in growth that makes sure that everybody's boat rises with the tide. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I don't believe if you make sure that a few get most, that somehow others will also get some. It's been disproven over and over again. Right now, you got to make $102,000 a year to afford a median home in the city. We are building hotels like there's no tomorrow. Multi-million-dollar hotels, luxury condos, Airbnbs. Somebody's making money off of all of this, but I'll tell you what, working class and middle class families, teachers and firefighters, construction workers, admins, people on the front lines are not. That's why we have to increase wages in the city. That's why we need a $15 an hour minimum wage in this city. And I know you're gonna light your hair on fire because every time we do, every time we want to try to protect workers, the chamber will light its hair on fire. But we raised the minimum wage to $10.10, and you know what happened? Economic growth continued.
Thank you. Spencer.
I'm not sure there's a policy proposal there, but for me, as the chair of the Sustainability and Transportation Committee, my goal is sustainable growth. And what that looks like is not just increasing the wages, but looking at the root of the problem. There is a reason why hotels are being built, because from an economic model, that actually performs better than housing, right? That is a systemic problem we have. And so as municipal officials, we have the obligation to figure out, hey, how are we gonna make sure that someone can build affordable housing in the city? For me, that's my missing middle initiative. That's my proposal to set aside 5 parcels of city-owned land to do public-private partnerships. That's how you get shovels in the ground for the affordable housing that we're talking about. We know that from the housing report that just came out, that a good place to be for residential vacancy is right around 7%, and we're at 4.2%. That is a systemic problem. We know that the eyes of the world are on Portland, as Travis said, for not just our restaurants, but also our quality of life. Our secret is out. And so the question for us is, are we going to be a community that wallows in the growth? Or are we going to have the tough conversation about what it's going to take to meet the demands of the people who want to be here and the people who have been here? Our greatest source of affordable housing in this city is housing that people are in today. And so when we talk about our proposals, we've got to balance the impact that that has on their tax bill.
That's time.
With also the want and the need to build more affordable housing.
Thank you. Travis.
So tourism is obviously never going to stop. They come to my restaurant, they eat, they're going to keep coming, guys. I mean, don't get me wrong, more Airbnbs are not the solution. More hotels are not the solution. I think the solution is a local option sales tax. We need to push for a local option sales tax on tourism amenities, such as the cruise ships and the hotel beds. I mean, honestly, I know you think they won't come. They're going to come. They will pay another nickel and another dollar for a hotel room to stay in Portland, Maine. We're getting more and more popular on a national scale. If we are able to nickel and dime the tourists and tax them, we can see property tax relief. We can afford more amenities in these programs. We need better transportation. We need night buses for our second and third shift workers who work at hospitals. There's no bus system at all that goes past 11 to help the hospital workers get home, especially if they don't drive. And parking. We need far more public lots. We need a better shuttle system. We need to lots off the peninsula. I mean, I think we should even have an light electric rail similar to the T. It doesn't have to be huge, just on and off the peninsula. It will ease the burden of parking downtown. It'll ease traffic, and it would seriously help us incentivize developers to build more workforce housing off the peninsula. As Portland grows, we have to grow with it. We have to act like a real city. We need overdose prevention sites to help our addicts in the streets that are in our doorways.
That's time. Thank you. Kate.
I don't think our city is broken at all. I think that we're faced with incredible and optimistic opportunity. I think what we're experiencing is the discomfort that comes along with transition and change. We're moving from a small city to a more medium-sized city, but the trick is that our population growth isn't actually tracking with those changes. And so we've still got a city of 67,000 people footing the bill for so many regional and statewide assets. And so we've got to go to the local option sales tax in order for us to be a city that can grow and smooth through some of these change moments that are uncomfortable for us, like investments in housing, investments in transportation. As one of only 12 states in the country that doesn't allow a local option sales tax, I feel that that is the #1 priority. To be able to tack an additional 1% on our already low 5.5% sales tax, one of the lowest in the country, we set ourselves up to gain additional municipal revenue, which will help the work that we want to do here as a city. It will also help the fact that our schools are so underfunded from the state. I also think that in order to be the city of optimism, we've got to give people more flexibility with the land that they own so that they can create accessory dwelling units, and that we rezone parcels of land that are currently not allowable for residential. We're growing, but we can do this in a way that is optimistic and forward-thinking.
All right, Kate, thank you. I got to land this plane and bring us to closing remarks here. But before we do, just show of hands, who does favor a local option sales tax? Okay, thank you. Let's get to closing remarks, and we'll start with Spencer. You have 60 seconds.
So I'm extremely hopeful about the future of Portland. When we talk about growth in our city and sustainable growth, what I said when I was running in 2015 was that Portlanders love change, but we hate it so much. The ideas that come along with it, the tough conversations that we have. My administration and my focus as your next mayor would be transit-oriented, to make sure that we make the investments to get to 15 minutes a bus going by bus stops on our main thoroughfares, to make sure that we're investing in workforce and affordable housing and low-income housing as well, to make sure that we're making citywide investments, not just on the peninsula and the Portland downtown, but also on the islands and off-peninsula where they feel like services are not being provided, to make sure we address climate change by continuing the efforts that we have to enlist in power purchase agreements to get most of our energy from renewable sources, and then to make sure that we are investing in our green space and making sure our parks are places where people want to be. I ask for your vote on November 5th, and thank you very much for the discussion this morning.
Ethan.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here and to talk and hear some of the ideas from my colleagues. Obviously, I've had a lot of conversations with you over the last 4 years. Again, I will just reiterate, our city is at a crossroads. You are very important pieces in trying to make sure that we protect our middle class, that we protect our working class. You are folks who are, of course, running our businesses. But let's also remember that your businesses can't run without the workers of this city, and we have to protect them as well. Your businesses can't run if our middle-class families can't shop in your stores. We've got to protect them as well. Our city is a remarkable city, but people are being squeezed out. And all of us together have to figure out how to make sure that we don't lose what is so great about this city, that we don't lose the people who built it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kate.
Thank you. Less than 4 weeks from now, Portlanders will make an important decision. We will decide if we want a new mayor or not, if we want a new voice on the council or not, if we want to maintain the status quo or not. I offer you a fresh perspective grounded in Portland experience as a homeowner, as a parent, as a professional, and as someone with 6 years elected experience serving our city. While I have a deep respect for existing relationships, I also see that too often the council is seen as an exclusive club. When we ratified the city's charter over 8 years ago, we made a decision to move away from a model that elected leadership from among colleagues to one where a general election allowed a council outsider to join the work. And I want to do just that. I'd like to do it in the spirit of public service that elevates your voice and your concerns as we navigate the challenging and really promising landscape ahead.
Okay, thank you. Travis.
I'm not a politician. I'm a working man. I'm part of the Portland people. I talk to them, I listen to them, and I absolutely want to represent them to fix the problems that I feel and they feel so passionately about. I get very passionate. I'm unpolished. I'm very candid. I used to have a history in stand-up comedy. But that's not important. What's important is fixing the town I love. I love it here. I've lived in Portland my whole life. I briefly moved to San Francisco and moved right back. But in city council, I want to be the voice of the people. I want to unify the city councilors. I want to remind them of the constituents that they represent. I want to remind all of you business owners that this is your Portland too, and we can all take care of it as we get more and more popular with the rising tide of tourism. If you want 4 more years of the same old, give someone else your vote. But in ranked choice voting, you get to pick 4 names. If I'm number 1, I promise to represent you and your interests.
All right, Travis, thank you. And thank you to all of our candidates for this morning's lively discussion. And thank you for your interest in this race in the future of Portland. Please be sure to get out and vote Tuesday, November 5th. Join us back at Eggs and Issues on November 13th when we talk all things transportation. Thank you for joining us and have a great day. Thanks.